Welcome to Meeples on Meeples, episode 58. I'm Adam.
Patrick.
Ian.
Before we get into our game of the week this week, as usual, we invite you over to our website, meeplesonmeeples.com, our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest pages where you can subscribe, like us, what have you. So you'll see our game of the weeks, our reviews, and all of our questions to you guys, the community.
This week's game is Race to Adventure. Now, the theme behind this game is you belong to an adventuring club and you have a little bet about who can visit the most places in the world and get back to the clubhouse before the others. The gameplay is very simple. At the beginning of the game, each of you gets a little character card. Now, each character card has a different character represented by a pog in the game, but there's no special abilities on the card. The card just has several spaces underneath each of the different countries that you can visit. There's a little footprint here where you're going to keep your clues. A little gas gauge right here, which will help you fuel up your jetpack that we'll talk about in a moment. And a little countdown here for when you try to save the prisoner from Atlantis. At the beginning of the game, each person places their plug somewhere in the clubhouse. Now, it doesn't really matter where you are in the clubhouse. You might create a strategy about your start point, but everyone starts somewhere in the clubhouse at the beginning of the game. The first player then gets to choose first. Now, what he's selecting is there are one of 6 actions each player can take. There's a jetpack. If you choose a jetpack, that'll allow you to jump from one a rectangle to another in a diagonal fashion, but only one.
Yeah, and it's just one move. Yep.
Just one move. Or you can choose the clue. Now, if you choose the clue on your turn, if you use that action card, you get to pick a clue and put it on your card. Now, if you choose the clue action in certain countries like the United States, you might actually get more than just one clue token, so you want to pay attention to where you pull that card and what country you're in. If you pull the map doesn't really give you any special abilities, but there are some countries that in order to get the stamp, you need to have the map card. You could choose the airplane. Now, the airplane allows the owner of the airplane to move 2 squares or 2 spaces, either in the same direction, or you can change it up by going one over and one up or down, or one up and one over, but you have to move in XY axis only.
And one limitation on the airplane is there are certain walls set up between the countries. The airplane cannot go over those walls.
Yeah, those walls block the airplane.
Unlike the jetpack, which can jump walls.
Can jump walls. The other interesting thing about the airplane, though, is if I use the airplane, the special benefit to the other player is that if I use the airplane, then all the other players can also move 1 square, 1 rectangle in either direction, X or Y. It's kind of assuming that I would pick them up and help them out, although I don't know why I would do that.
No, you wouldn't, definitely.
I would.
You're a horrible player.
I am. I'm cruel. The 5th possibility is the blimp or the dirigible. And when you pick the dirigible, you can just automatically jump to the cards that have the dirigible symbol in the corner, in the bottom right corner in this case, and you can just automatically jump there from anywhere on the board, and that's just where it parks. And the last one is a kind of a electro gun or static gun, and those guns don't give you any benefits unless you're in certain countries that require the gun to get their stamp.
It's a lot like the map. It's one of the ones that doesn't give you anything, but you need it.
But you need it. So the object is to go to a country, meet the requirements for the stamp, put the stamp on your card, and then try to get to the next country and meet the requirements. There's a couple interesting places. Nepal is totally surrounded by a wall. The only way to get there is using the jetpack. You have to time it correctly. If you get into Egypt and you're playing on the proper side of the card, if you get into Egypt, you are cursed. The only way to get rid of that curse is to visit Brazil, where you are cured. If you are cursed, you can't do any other stamps or any other actions other than these cards until you are cured in Brazil. And finally, Atlantis. In Atlantis, you don't start off with a stamp, you start off with rescuing a prisoner. And you need to get back to the clubhouse, the middle floor in the clubhouse, within 4 turns, really, or 3 turns after you get the stamp. Otherwise, he mysteriously disappears and goes back to Atlantis, and you have to try to rescue him again.
Mysteriously.
Mysteriously.
Yes.
That is the key.
It is Atlantis.
It is Atlantis. And the object is just try to visit everywhere, try to plan your actions out properly, get all the stamps by meeting the requirements, and be the first one back to the clubhouse to win. And that's really how it plays. The one interesting key part about this, though, is after everyone chooses their actions, everybody plays their actions at the exact same time. So you have to pay attention. So that as you're playing the action, if somebody else plays the plane and you're planning on moving that turn with their use of the plane. If you miss it, and it goes on to the next action, you lose that benefit.
And
know
you
that
don't,
firsthand.
yeah, and you don't have to play your action.
No,
so
you
you
don't.
can pick the plane, choose not to fly, and have everybody else counting on a free move.
And
So-
and totally lock
and that
them
gets a
out.
little into strategy.
Yeah, that's a little strategy. And that's pretty much the gameplay and the rules. It's actually fairly simple, and it's one of those games that's, once you play it once through, or even just the first round, you pick it up very quick.
Why don't we start off with the components like normal? Not a lot to this game, really. I mean,
You have a player mat that's cardboard. All the pieces, I have to say, are decent cardboard chits. There's no flimsy cards. You don't have to worry about ruining cards or sleeving anything. I kind of like the art. It has that campy, cheesy, artistic flavor to it.
we talked about this in another game that we love the artwork on, Sentinels of the Multiverse. It has a very similar feel, a very comic book
Yeah.
look to it. It's really well done. I mean, everything else in the game is pretty simple, straightforward, but they really went all out with the artwork. I mean, it looks really nice.
I don't know. I like the player mats. You kind of keep with the game. It does make it a little bit, I guess, difficult to kind of keep having, because it is so fast, to keep having to look to see where everybody's got and everything else.
Yeah.
But since they break it down into the 5 cards, right? 5.
Yeah.
It's really easy to
there's
see
six-
what's
there's
being
six- there's six of these cards.
what's being taken off the board or whatever. So it's easy to keep track of their moves, but then to see where they're going next and how they're getting there. Because they kind of fade out a little bit from the game mat, you can't really see.
But I
where
think
they're
that's
at.
kind of a purpose. I mean, I really have to pay attention to his card, and we'll talk about strategy in a minute. It does blend in, but I think it's kind of a good thing, because I don't want people, just quickly looking at my thing and say, "Oh, he needs to get to Atlantis." If they want to try to,
That's the point of the game,
Yeah.
is to build in that screwage. I think to blend that out though, or to kind of like so you can't see very well, doesn't really help that point.
I'm gonna a couple more negatives kind of going down that route. And one of them, because we have to bring it up, I think it's contractual in all of our reviews. We have interlocking pieces, please. I mean, it's basically going to be set up in the same thing. Just you're going to move the pieces around, but they could have made it so they had
I
the
could
same
see.
interlocking
What's
parts.
the point of actually splitting that up? Why?
The
Why
reason
would
they do that just so that to defend the box a little bit easier.
And the only reason I bring it up is
But how is
did-
that not going to fit the box?
Oh, that's true. And the only reason I bring up the interlocking pieces is I did actually move this around
Yeah, by accident.
fairly often, grabbing at my piece, moving it. It's
Yeah.
just it doesn't stick together.
Kid
well.
gloves.
I think,
Kid
but
gloves.
I think
Sorry.
interlocking pieces, you lose some of the artistic work because they have to be cut into the artistic
might.
work. The one thing I did like about the components is there's also an easy. We played the harder version, the nightmare version. There's also an easy version with totally different pictures on the other side.
That's true, and that gets back to the artwork.
But it's the same country.
Really good.
It's
so
the
you
same
could,
country.
So you could actually, with a different flavor, you could actually use easy with hard.
Yeah, you can mix and match.
I mean,
We did all hard. You can mix it, like with my kids, we played, especially with my young ones, we played easy. There's no walls, you don't have to worry about that. But it's just kind of fun, and you can mix and match where you can flip some of these over and not really know what you're going to
But
run
still,
into.
the tower stays together the whole time.
Yeah,
And
the
it's
tower
still-
always
yeah.
stays together.
That doesn't make any sense.
So
My other kind of downside on the player mat is it's nice. It has a place for like the stamps and everything, but the place for like the clues is
not big
far
enough.
too small. I mean,
Yeah.
you end up stacking a bunch of these things on there, and you're given. a really,
I started
really
just
small
creating a
spot.
pile in front of me rather
So
than
it's-
putting on my character board.
They could have made it maybe just a little bit bigger to give you a bigger kind of storage areas for your stuff, but otherwise they're serviceable.
Like
Yeah, they probably could have a little bit.
Takaneko or whatever.
That or
like
Stone
the
Age
the
even.
panda belly.
Yeah, I think Stone Age does a good job of it. It's a little bit bigger. You have little spots where you can kind of.
Yeah, and they had a little bit more room to put a little bit bigger player card, but not by much. I mean, if you look at the size of the box compared to this, there's not much more room in use them.
But when you break it down, you do get a player mat.
Yeah.
And you do understand your moves, and so it's very nice for that point.
Yeah.
So let's talk about strategies next. What do you guys think about strategy? This is one of those things that strategy changes quite quickly. So.
It's such a fast-paced game that you really got to be able to adapt on the fly. I mean,
My thing was I just looked at what the board layout really right in the beginning. Board layout. What 2 things or 3 things that you can kind of stack against each other. Also, your default move with the blimp, getting Switzerland, kind of a key initial move. If you get first move, you kind of just get that flag out of the way and call it good.
with map layout on the difficulty, I agree with that completely because there's a few places you got to keep an eye on. I think in particular on the difficult mode. One is where Brazil is, which is the place you have to get to cure yourself. and also where Atlantis is. Because if Atlantis is really close to the clubhouse or the home base, it should be one of the more difficult tiles, but it can be really easy, especially if it's right next door. You can get that prisoner in one move them over.
Well, I would just kind of piggyback on that. I didn't actually think those were the difficult ones. I thought like Nepal was more difficult in Great Britain because of the amount of complexity of getting in and getting out.
They are.
Britain is.
I go to Brazil and Atlantis because they're the ones that require movement.
Mm-hmm.
You have to move to them, and if they're within, in this case, where the dirigible is, like right next door to that, it's easy to move there. But if they're
go dirigible here and then.
But if they're on the other side of the map, and the only way you can get there is with a plane or with a jetpack, you really got to kind of plan out how you're going to get to both of those places or get away from both of those places.
One other actual strategy point to screw it, really. As soon as somebody jumps into Nepal, if you have the ability to take the jetpack away from them and
keep them there, you lock them in.
There,
yeah.
And then the third person, they can then either do really whatever they wanted at that point. So watch for that gameplay. And also, if that's the case, if you have kind of a no good move, always grabbing the clue is good.
Yeah. The one thing that I liked about, or a strategy that I used, is paying attention to where everyone else is. Because sometimes you're at a point, like you said, where you're surrounded by countries you already have, and you're like, there's no good moves right now. And everyone's waiting, and you talked about this at the beginning of the review, everyone's waiting for somebody to pick that plane because everyone's one spot away. And so if I have no good moves, I will pick the plane and not use it. And now everybody else is messed up because they're planning, they got everything else in case somebody used the plane. And if you use the plane and say, well, I'm not going to go anywhere,
I thought that was just because you were a jerk.
Oh, I agree. Or like if somebody's for example, if somebody's at Antarctica and they only have 2 clues, well, Antarctica either uses a ray gun or a map with 3 clues. Well, I'm going to take the ray gun, and then he has to waste, he has to waste his time, or he already had the map, so he can't get clues anymore, and I just made him waste 3 steps. So sometimes it's not always an offensive game. Sometimes this game is turned into defensive, where I'm going to block you from winning if I can't win at this moment myself. And I like that. I like that last minute screwage and getting blocked.
In our last game we played, I tried relying too much on other people giving me free moves with the airplane, and I ended up coming in last place on that one, where it may have been better for me to just get the airplane myself, get the moves out of the way, and just collect the stamps. Whereas I was building up clues and grabbing like the map or the ray gun, thinking, "Oh, Pat's going to use the plane because he picked it up," and then he wouldn't.
Yeah, then I wouldn't.
And to that, I was doing the exact opposite, where I was just, if I need the plane, I grab the plane.
Yeah, and that's what I should have done.
And I just went for it, but I went and actually just went on where is the easiest ones to kind of link together.
Yeah.
And then I just said, which ones are the ones that are out of my way and really hard to get?
Yeah.
Knock those out first, and then move
the
forward.
The map to set up. The other, you have to know the map, and you have to create a plan from the first sight of the map. The other thing is you really have to pay attention to all the players, because me and Adam were busy messing around with each other at the beginning, and you just went to town. But before we looked at it, we each had 2, and you had 4, and we're like,
how'd you guys catch up so quickly?
Where'd that happen?
It was still a one-round game, though. I mean, yeah, you were still
within
right
1 to 2 rounds. Yeah, all the games we've played have been. It started off, somebody's going like gangbusters, but then everyone starts to play defensively, and we were within 1-2 stamps on all the games that we've played.
I did notice a trend, though, that in the beginning, planes were being used a lot more than at the end of the game.
I think
more blimp usage and jetpack usage
because you don't get the other benefits to the other players.
Because you were playing more defensive right in the beginning. Everybody's like scramble offense, and then they don't care about the extra moves. And most people didn't even take them when they were available or liberal for that.
And it's very interesting to say that there's an offensive and defensive to this game, because this is such a simplistic game that you would say, this game really does have an offensive portion of it and then a defensive portion to it, and you have to play both very well to win.
Why don't we do our likes and dislikes on this one? I'm going to start separate off and say, and this goes back to strategy a little, be sure you pick the right character for you. And oh wait, the characters don't matter.
The characters don't matter. They're just their figurehead.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the player board. It's neat that each character has their own art and that sort of thing. But I mean, the problem is and maybe this is to keep it simplistic, but there's no special ability for the character.
No.
The characters don't matter.
And I think the idea was
besides giving you a different icon to move around the board.
Let's piggyback on that a little bit. The theme. Doesn't really matter. You're collecting stuff, trying to get.
I'm gonna go against you there. I think the theme actually comes across really well. It's kind of like a globe trotting, trying to get back and forth. I figure
these are the things I need for this space, and I need to get it, and that gives me a token for it. It had nothing to do with actually like flying around the world, because I was not linked to an individual that actually.
And it's not that, but I mean, it's the fact that moving is so not difficult, but you have to really dedicate yourself to moving around the board to get to the different places. That I felt the traveling across the world kind of feel to it. I don't know. That came across to me for some reason.
Really? I thought it was really reaching to even get to that point.
No, to me, the race, and I would agree with Adam on this one. To me, the race really.
Yeah. I
got the feeling of I was an adventurer in the club, and I was trying to beat you to get to point A to point B and home before everyone else. I felt that race.
Race was there, but the whole globe trotting, like to me, it was just playing gets me 2 moves.
See,
I just like I get one move.
But that's part of the theme. I mean, the plane does that. That's
this piece gives me this. This piece gives me this. I wasn't attached to it, maybe because I think it goes back to I didn't give a character.
If you had a character.
Same thing. It's like with King of Tokyo. You're not really attached to that character. You can be any character. It doesn't matter. It doesn't give you a special benefit.
I agree that the character is just a face.
Yes.
But I think that the theme plays out. The one thing I like about this, I like double-sided. Make it easy. Make it hard. You can intermix. I like the art on it. I think it's fun art. I think it's fun art. I like the simplicity of play. I love heavy games, and we've talked about this just recently. I love heavy games, but if there's a game that's simplistic enough that you can pull out in 30 minutes after a heavy game and just fly through it, and they have a couple laughs and a couple stabs in the back, that's a fun time.
I like that too. I don't know if it's really that simplistic though.
It's more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
It's a very simple idea. Like it's not one of those where you're ripping out the rule book and kind of reading over it again and again. But it's because you have to be able to think on the fly and adapt your strategy. So it reminds me a lot of Renaissance Man, which is a game that we've reviewed recently as far as how the game plays out. Because you take your actions at the same time, and your strategy can change on the fly based on what everybody else is doing. So it's just a very fast-paced game, and so I don't know if it's necessarily simple to the state where it's a gateway game, but it's simple as in you can play it quick. So I'd agree with you there.
But I would think it would be a gateway game because I think it is fast enough to teach somebody. And the artwork, it's kind of a fun theme.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything heavy like slamming down a miniature game in front of somebody and go at it.
I don't like the idea that it takes a gameplay or whatever gameplay and a half to kind of get really into it and understand what everything's about. So being an entry level, like you're going to bring somebody in and say you're going to have fun, but you're automatically going to lose that first game, especially if you're behind on as a
if you have two experienced players or three experienced players.
So that's going to really offset that.
You would have to have a learning game so that not everyone's cutthroat.
Well, think about it. You won the first game. You've played this before, and Adam and I were on our learning curves. And then
don't go lumping me with you.
whether your learning curve was steeper or not, I don't know. But I mean, the idea that there's very few words, so that should help you.
Yeah, a lot of pretty pictures,
a lot of symbols. But you could play with a younger crowd. Getting to that point, you can play.
You can play with the younger crowd. I think that's
Candyland-esque.
Yeah, and I think it's Candyland-esque. And I think those are any other likes or dislikes?
No, I mean I'm going to jump in. You already said, but I just love the art style.
Yeah.
I mean that's probably the shining point of this.
The fact that the borders and kind of you can't go into certain areas, kind of little gotchas where like you get cornered.
Like in Nepal.
Yeah. I mean, really, I can get stuck in there if somebody decides for 6 rounds to keep taking that jetpack.
Now, if you play the easy side, you can fly in and out, no problem. But the nightmare side is where you can go. And you can be a flying monkey. You can be a monkey with a jetpack.
Yeah, but again, I'm not that character. I'm just a faceless individual, and it doesn't bring me in.
But I like the idea that they gave us a monkey.
Oh yeah, but let him do something other than just be a monkey. and why he has a lab coat and spectacles, I don't know.
He's a smart monkey.
Oh, of course, because you can't be smart if you have a jetpack. You have to be able to operate it.
That's okay.
Shouldn't give him a pilot mask or something. If you can have a jetpack.
Well, I think that's enough for
that's our likes and dislikes.
That's our review system is 1 through 10. 1 being the worst game in the world, burn it, use it for kindling. 10 being the best game you'll ever experience, nothing wrong with it, and buy it immediately, especially if the price is right.
I'm gonna go, I think, an 8 on this one. What bumps it up for me, as Pat just pointed out, you got a monkey with a lab coat and spectacles. The fact that you can play.
I know more games have that.
I was the monkey in spectacles, and
you still didn't feel it.
No, I didn't feel it.
If this had,
I feel like a monkey with spectacles.
If this had interlocking player mats, it would be a 10.
You want interlocking docking player mats to the board?
Yeah, if we could, yeah.
Oh yeah, of course.
Just create a little.
But no, it's like everything we've said. It's got a great art style. It's a quick play once you get into it. The rules. It can be a little daunting when you first play the game, not because of the rules, but just the way the gameplay goes, how quickly it goes, how fast it is. But the rules are very straightforward. You're not going to be going back to the rule book trying to figure things out. The components are all, besides the artwork, good quality. You get your player mats. The biggest thing, though, is it's one of those games. It's fun. It's fast-paced with a lot of player interaction, where you're always keeping track of what everybody else is doing. You're not sitting around waiting for your turn all the time. And kind of like a lot of the games we played recently, kind of the shorter games, it's one of those, kind of a palate cleanser game. You can play this in between games on a game night or something like that. It's a real quick play. Put it away, and you can pull it out, every week, every other week, and just use it as kind of your in between or while you're waiting for other people to get there. It's a solid 8. It's fun. I would definitely recommend it.
For me, actually, I'm gonna go with an 8 as well. The one thing that really sold me on this game, when I first saw it, my children wanted it, so I went on and got it. I thought this is going to be just a simple game. We played on the simple side, that was okay. Then with my
you bought it for Ian too, then, right?
Yeah, well, I don't like words.
Yeah, I know. Then my older children wanted to play the harder side, so I said, let's break it out. And what we hit on it here, it's a game that definitely has an offensive and a defensive play to it. As you play, your offensive strategy and your defensive strategy have to meet together. There's a lot more sophistication into it. I mean, it's not a hard game, but there's a lot of sophisticated tweaks that they have to it that really makes it a competitive game, and that's what drew me in on it. It's fast, it's easy, it's competitive, and come on, let's face it, we all like stabbing each other in the back. I mean, we're big at trader games and games that you can really mess somebody over with. And of course, there's the 5 monkeys.
The monkeys.
It was the monkey. For me, it's just an 8 because it was one of those cute surprises. I opened it up. It was a cute game, but then it had a lot of surprises.
And plus, you own it.
Which automatically bumps it up.
No, I have. We know that there's a game I have that nobody will bump up, and we'll review that game eventually.
Manhattan Project, you can say it.
I mean, everybody's aware, man.
If we haven't made our hate for that game clear. Now, anyway.
There's people who like that game, but that's not
your review.
My review. 7. I mean, the theme didn't come across. I was the flying monkey, and I could care less. It didn't matter at all. It was fun to look at it for like 4 seconds, and then the rest of the game was just pull a piece, get a piece.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm not listening anymore. You said you hated or had no reason to care for the monkey.
You could have been the monkey. You could be the monkey next time. Anyways, the inability to this game looks like it's ripe for expansions. Add a couple more players or whatever have you, but the player mats don't allow for that, and so it just. You're stuck with what you got.
The 9 countries. Yeah.
There's you could get new characters, but that's not going to matter.
No, exactly.
A new face.
Exactly. So I mean, they could maybe try to add attributes or whatever, but then the original gaming
is not there. Yeah.
I mean, there's some pieces that they could add into the game and make the game better. Just do a different revision of it. But as it sits right now, it's just that's all you get with the game is what it is. You're not looking to build on this franchise. You're not looking to build on this game. Whatever.
Not this event, yeah.
And the fact that the theme and play didn't actually come through and made it just a bit less fun for me than you guys were kind of cutthroat at each other and just let me play. So I'm happy for the win, thanks.
Yeah. But, it's okay for it to be wrong.
Yeah, it's
you do it a lot, so that's fine.
Well, it makes sense, but that's kind of where I sit with it. It was fun at the time, but there's some parts that could have been better.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's Race to Adventure for this week. Tune in next week, and we'll have another game for you to watch.
Maybe next week.